Okay, this video is about how to detox from microplastics and how to avoid them. I previously gave a shorter video about this before that, they've now discovered that people have microplastics in their brains and in their kidneys and other parts of their body. This is one of the big papers on it where they did a bunch of autopsies and found that people had a lot of plastic fragments. So the question then is, well, what could you do? This is just pictures of these microplastics inside people's bodies. Certain things you don't even think about them, but you don't want to use these plastic cutting boards. Plastic cutting boards put a lot of plastic into your food. Other obvious things is don't ever want to heat plastic. I'll go through a whole list of all the things you can do. You can get a glass cutting board, a marble cutting board, a wood cutting board. Those are all different options. Okay. Here's one about, you never want to heat up anything in plastic because an extraordinarily large amounts, like millions of pieces of plastics, will get into the water when you heat up water in plastics. And like in a microwave, that's like the worst thing to do. All right, they've also found that the microplastics are found in ovarian follicular fluid. So they're concerned that this is potentially another one of the big things contributing to the increasing rates of infertility in women. I see a lot of that, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We talked about that before, all the endocrine disrupting chemicals. One quick point about these endocrine disrupting chemicals, one of the researchers calls this whack-a-mole, in the sense that everybody knows bisphenol A. Bis means two chemical constituents on opposite sides. So these are phenol groups. A benzene ring with a hydroxyl group is a phenol group. So you have two phenols, but they're not connected to each other. So that's a bisphenol. But everybody became aware of it, was unhappy about BPA, so they said, oh, you got to get rid of this. So the food company's like, yeah, sure. And they just made BPS, bisphenol sulfate. And they'll just put a sulfate group in the middle, the sulfur there. And so it's essentially still the same thing because it's the phenol group that interacts with the estrogen receptor. So you still have a highly estrogenic chemical. And the corporations can always do this. So you can never get a corporation to get rid of a chemical problem. So here's just, the game, the whack-a-mole. You hit one mole and it goes down, but another one pops up in another hole. So you're never going to win that game. Only thing to do is avoid them. This is just a paper showing that there can be a lot of microplastics in many types of table salt. 90% of brands in this one study contain some microplastics. So they're relatively ubiquitous in the environment and stuff. It's another good reason to decrease your salt. Here's a couple other papers also talking about microplastic contamination in salt. Here's one showing that, some of these microparticles that get into processed foods like bread. The more a food is processed, the more you're going to get microparticles in it. This is just one paper claiming you increase lymphatic flow when you're well hydrated, but it's especially just, from the stomach, the immediate time of absorption, not necessarily all around the body. But I thought that was a little interesting as maybe a minor argument for hydration being beneficial to a cancer patient to increase lymphatic flow. But the main thing to do is get more exercise and avoid high-fat meals. All right, so now here's the part you've been waiting for, to go through what can you actually do. You want to stop drinking bottled water. It's got a lot of microplastics in it. Much better to have reverse osmosis water. Even tap water's got a lot less microplastics than does bottled water. It's good to store your water in glass or in stainless steel. So a good way to handle it would be a a whole house carbon filter. That should remove a lot of stuff in your estrogens, for example. And then a kitchen reverse osmosis filter. You could get such a thing as a whole house reverse osmosis, but that would waste a lot of water and be super expensive. Hydration might help microplastic excretion by liver or kidney. Not enough research has been known for sure. Some preliminary work suggests that it does. But you got to be careful with hydration, that the water you're drinking is good. That's not always, it's easier said than done. Hydration also increases lymphatic flow. Never heat plastic in microwave. We talked about that. Heat's the worst thing. Acidic fluids will also cause more leaching of the microplastics from the food. Lipid things like oil will cause a tremendous. You shouldn't be eating any oil anyways, none, zero. But it's a really bad thing would be the oil in a plastic container, because that'll leach a lot of plastics. They both are similar enough. The risk with a plastic coffee maker contacting hot coffee. So when you heat it up, you're heating up that hot coffee, and if it's being stored in plastic or has to run through plastic, you can leach a lot of microplastics in that way. Peter Attia, I saw his video. He claims there's some brand of coffee maker where only metal and glass contact the hot water, but but it's rather expensive, that one. And then here's the thing that kind of surprised me. This one of the viewers taught me something new here. They notified me that in their personal research, I haven't seen their paper, they're just telling me this. They say that the water pick used to clean teeth, and I do like my water pick. They said you shouldn't use it because it puts a lot of microplastic in the water. I'm like, on the one hand, I said, well, I just spit all the water out. I don't ingest any of it. But I don't know. I'm considering to stop using the water pick from that. But I want to hear how they figured that out and how definitely true it is. I tried to find the paper. I couldn't find a paper on that effect. But logically, it does make sense. The water sits in plastic, and you pump it under pressure through plastic tubing. So you would think that would maybe, by abrasive mechanism, pull some plastic off the wall. And I try never to leave water sitting in it. Avoid processed foods. By the way, instead of using the water pick, I could just rinse my mouth with water and spit it out. Maybe that's what I'll start doing. Use a glass cup, rinse my mouth with water and spit it out, which I used to do anyways, but then I started using the water pick only a couple months ago, actually about a little more than that, about 8 months ago. Okay, avoid processed foods. Yeah, the more you process the food, the more you're going to have microplastic and other potential debris inside of it. Like I remember that Lead Safe Mama Lady, TamaraRubin.com, she said that the more you process a pasta, for example, the more likely you are to have increased cadmium in it. Processing, does negative things to food. With food, if it comes wrapped in plastic, even your fruits and veggies, it's good to rinse it off before you eat it. There could be plastic on the outer surfaces of it that you could rinse off. Use glass. Use glass cups when you're drinking. Use a glass water bottle or a stainless steel water bottle. It's most important if you're drinking a hot stuff. It's really a stupid idea to be drinking hot coffee, hot tea out of a plastic cup, because a lot of people go to these coffee shops and they buy coffee in a plastic container, and it's leaching that plastic, the hot liquid, off the side of the cup. And we talked about do not use a plastic cutting board. Store food in the fridge in glass. Like I'll put food in the fridge in glass and just put a plate on top of it so it gets less oxidized. Do not cover with this cling wrap or saran wrap, whatever you want to call it, because that'll typically contain plastics like polyethylene or PVC. Don't eat with plastic silverware. Eat with regular silverware. Never eat oil. We talked about that. Oil in a container leaching is a terrible thing. Avoid synthetic clothing to the extent that you can, especially when you go to the gym. You're going to sweat a lot. So it's good to get clothes made out of cotton. Perfect ideal thing is organic cotton or wool clothes. Be careful about canned food. I realize sometimes it's convenient and all that, but it is lined with a BPA plastic. And you can't avoid this stuff completely. I'm just saying things you can do to lower your exposure to it. It's up to you how much effort you want to put into this. BPA is mostly excreted by the urine, some by sweat. You excrete a lot of other things in sweat, including heavy metals like arsenic, lead, aluminum, mercury. Milk cartons are also lined with plastic. It's a pretty typical thing. Consider a whole, a good house air filter that can remove some that are in the air. Lipstick can contain microplastics. It's good to minimize all these personal care products to the extent you can. Some tea bags contain plastic, and if you're soaking them in hot water, they could leach. We talked about salt. Dietary fiber is thought to be beneficial. In part, it can partially bind ingested plastics, so you excrete them by defecation. The dietary fiber also helps to maintain the gut wall so you don't get leaky gut, which decreases by having an intact gut. You absorb less of these microplastics. So anyways, those are some things you can do. I hope you found that helpful.